starting off up north with Piroa Conservation Trust with Graham Matthews. So Graham and I have been doing a bit of mahi in Green Bay, and so he's going to be talking about the trust, what they do, and some of the work that we have done together at the end. Then after that we will have Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust, then Barker's Creek Catchment Group, Te Atiawaki Whakarongotai Charitable Trust, then Ruamahanga Farm Foundation, and then we will be going out for our cruise and coming back here for the rest of our presentations this afternoon. So I'll hand over to you, Graham.
Thank you. Kia ora, Graham Matthews, Piroa Conservation Trust. Piroa is, for those that don't know, is the Brynderwyn range. They are probably more well known for road issues, but there's a whole lot of really good stuff going on in the Piroa. Could you just, like Piroa Conservation Trust has morphed out of a number of conservation groups working around the Brynderwyn's Piroa range, principally trapping, but a lot of weeding and tracking. So what happened was the group decided to get some structure in it. We needed to form a trust, so they formed the trust. And what trusts do is allows you to get into the real money, and that's basically what's happened. In the Brynderwyns, there's a consequence of the trapping and the focus of the trapping has been to reintegrate kiwi back into the range, and that's happening. We're getting real success with our trapping program, and the kiwi are moving through the Brynderwyns again, so that's really a plus. I had one of our farmers contact us a couple of weeks ago, all excited. He's touching 70, lived on the farm his whole life. He had 4 bellbirds turn up on his garden, and that's just indicative of what's happening. You focus on the primary target, but the whole of the environment benefits. So there's a whole lot of good stuff. As I said, Piroa Conservation Trust is made up of a whole lot of these conservation activities. What I'm going to talk about now is almost a subgroup of that, what we call the PCT MPI project. And what happened, because we had the structure, and this is going back 2 or 3 years ago, and MPI were looking for a place in Northland to run a catchment group model. The first thing is that the model is we're in partnership with Patuharakeke, which is our local iwi. So we're tied in with them and we're doing this together. The thing with Northland is that it's the catchment group model hasn't really taken off there. There's a variety of reasons. Actually, I think we're probably going to the next slide there, I think. Yeah. This is the challenges of Northland and why the project came forward. And it's just a 2.25 year project. So the idea is to get in, go hard, then hopefully we've got something that's been going forward. But the problem was catchment groups haven't really worked. Some of the reasons for that is the variability of Northland. If you look at a soil map, it's just a patchwork quilt. So you can have neighbours doing different things because they're on different soil types. And in the catchment, there's a huge range of the size of the blocks from lifestyle blocks to big economic units. So we've got the whole range, the whole spectrum of activity in Northland. Comparing that with some catchments down south, and I'm taking the extreme, but it might be a big catchment, and they're all sheep and beef guys doing the same thing. So to get those guys on the page is a lot easier than having a whole lot of different activities, different size blocks. Lifestyle is economic units. So all of that's been the thing. the other thing in Northland that, compared to further south, is a much bigger iwi component too into land ownership, and that's got to be part of the mix. Yeah, he's one of our supporters. The keys to success, well, we're pulling this information from all around the country, but the keys to the success is it's got to be the whole of the catchment, and it's got to be the whole of the community. You know, from the catchment thing, the sediments effectively coming from the higher ground. You know, the fish barrier things coming from the estuary up. It's the whole interconnectedness of the system. So it's got to be the whole catchment. And the other thing, it's got to be the whole of the community. You know, you can't get into the them and us, and you know, we are where we are. We've just got to find a way to go forward. You know, so it's tying all that together, and it's accepting it's going to be an intergenerational project. You know, we're just starting really. It'll be our kids' that are seeing the benefit of it, because that's the time frame we're talking about. Just quickly, I'll just go through what we've done. We've got 5 active catchment groups. These are basically, as far as catchments go, it's a pretty small area. And we've basically got the Ruakaraka and the Waipū rivers. And most of these are actually catchment groups which are tributaries of the Waipū. And Grant's on one of them, which is the Patuharakeke. He's at the top of that catchment. And then there's the other ones. We've touched base with all the significant landowners and a reasonable chunk of the lifestyle block guys. One of the benefits of being under the Piroa Conservation thing is this MPI model has been able to sort of tack on to what they were doing anyway. And one of the things we've been focusing on is the education side of things. And it was already happening, and we've just plugged in the whole catchment group idea into that. This woman here, Susan, she's our Tariti lady. Tara iti, which is a fairy tern, the most endangered shorebird in the country. And they only nest in 4 sites, and one of them's the Waipū estuary. So that's really important to us. And that everything ties together. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Everything's connected. You know, see, Susan's focusing on the estuary because that's her passion, but she knows that the estuary is a function of what's happening upstream. So it's tying everything together, and that's the message we're trying to get through to the kids, is that nothing's in isolation. Everything's dependent on what's around it, and it supports each other. And the kids are the future too, so we've got to get them on the path. Thanks. The other thing was, under the umbrella, we had a nursery ticking over, and because of the catchment group came in, it needed to ramp up a lot, because we had a huge demand of riparian and wetland plants. So what we found is the nursery's been a really good way of bringing the community together. There's what we call in Waipū, what we call refugees coming out of Auckland are coming up. You know, they've, as a general statement, they've got a bit of time on their hands, and something like the nursery is a great way for those people to integrate into the community. You know, there's a whole pool out there that are quite happy to volunteer 3 hours a week, you know, and give them a cup of tea and a biscuit, and everyone's happy, you know. So we're plugging into that, and the nursery's punching out about 7,000 plants a year now, and we're probably going to ramp that up to about 10,000 this coming year. But as I said, the real plus from it is obviously the plants, but it's also bringing the getting people on the page. What are we trying to do? What are the reasons for it? So it's getting that whole buy-in. So that's been really useful. What the key drivers are the big landowners, the big economic landowners, and you've got to get those guys on board, otherwise your effectiveness isn't happening. And what they need is information. So what we did through access to experts, we got a biodiversity plan from them. And what we had was the experts, they came along, we identified 7 sites which were representative of different aspects of the catchment. And then they gave us their assessment of how can we rehabilitate it, and gave us some guidance in that area. So that was been really useful. Following on from that led to what we call our biodiversity projects. And what we did there is identified three sites that were spread across the catchment. They had to have biodiversity benefits, and they were different benefits. One of them's trying to highlight the idea of the corridor thing, how it's where that is in Ruakaka. We've got a Wai Connection have identified the īnanga spawning sites. There's a bit of bush up there. Nick went up there and found banded kokopū in a really small little bit of bush. So the idea of that one is trying to highlight just the interconnectedness of everything. Those small patches of bush, it's surprising what's there, but there's got to be a pathway for fauna to get there. The other two are basically this idea of an īnanga and a bitten friendly wetland. That's what we were trying to do. One of them was about a 3 hectare site, which is going to be a big site up the catchment, and the other one was a rearing pond. So this is probably our biggest success. We got the idea of this īnanga rearing pond from Bay of Plenty. There was a wānanga up in Bay of Islands, and Peter Ellery came up and talked. He was from, I think, Kaituna Catchment, and they developed the idea, and excuse me. The idea of the īnanga rearing pond is that it's in the intertidal zone where you've got water movement, and what you do is build a channel and a pond in that area. And if you built the same size pond further up the catchment, the carrying capacity of that pond from an īnanga's point of view is a function of the food supply. So there's only so much food there, therefore the carrying capacity of that pond for īnanga is X. If you do it in the intertidal zone, where you've got water movement literally 4 times a day, every time the tide comes in, it's bringing more food. So the carrying capacity of that pond is a multiple of X because it's a function of the food supply. So that's the idea. The last slide, the first point is you've got to work out where half tide is, and that's the height of your channel coming off the river, and then you've got to build the pond. If you go to the next one, sorry, and the pond has to be below the half tide level. So when the tide goes out, you've still got the pond, and what we found is oxbows are really useful, because the oxbows, where the river used to be, is it's and years ago, and the advantage of oxbows is that most of the earthworks are already done for you. All you're doing is scraping out the bottom and rearranging what's there. Actually, it was that one. Just go back. Yeah, this is us digging it doesn't look flash. It was literally in the middle of winter, and there was just mud everywhere. But as you can see, this is the oxbow. This is ground level here. So this is actually the old riverbed, and all we're doing is taking that sediment out of the bottom of the oxbow. What happened was we built this, and we built it in June. About September, I went there, and I thought there was some fish in there. I didn't know, but you could see a bit of movement. So I ring up Nick, all excited, and they say, "Look, I think we got fish in there." And his comment was, "Were you sure they're not Gambesia?" And I'm thinking, "Oh God!" So we put some traps out, and we put 4 traps out, and flick to the next one, thanks. And this is what was in the first trap. We had the biggest īnanga I've ever seen, and there was another one that size, and in the first trap, these are just turning from whitebait, and they're just starting to go from the glassy stage to getting darker. But we on the 4 traps we had something like 1,000 plus īnanga, bullies, and tuna. And the reality is we just couldn't believe it, because it still looked like a mud pond, but because of that intertidal thing, the food thing, obviously the īnanga thought it was home. So that was a real plus, and that's probably our biggest win at this stage. The other side of the biodiversity thing is water quality, and when you're dealing with dairy farmers now, which are principally our big landowners, what's happened in the dairy industry over the last 20, 30 years is the bigger got bigger and the small have got out. So, dairy farmers now are running big businesses. They're data driven. They've got to have the data to make decisions. And this was the message we got loud and clear at the start. They needed information. It was our good luck that NRC, doing their water quality testing around Northland, just happened to be doing Bream Bay the year we needed it. So they came in 9 sites, tested the water quality over 12 months. What we did is we got a report done by Travis Environmental, and the idea was to try to get all this information in a report that was suitable for catchment groups. They could understand it, and focusing on sediment, nitrogen, phosphate, and E. coli. And what it showed really, which was quite disappointing, is water quality hadn't really changed in 12, 15 years. So, for us in the catchment, we were disappointed in that, because we know things have changed significantly from 20, 30 years ago. Humongous changes, but it's not showing up in water quality. So we started to think about this. Can you click on the next one, please? And fortuitously, the ACE course, the Aotearoa Catchment extension course, we had information coming out of there in Southland, and the thing with Southland and Northland is they're very similar in that they've got heavy soils. They require underground drainage, subsurface drainage to farm them sensibly. And just quickly, what they found in Southland was firstly, the first thing they found, there was a surprising amount of contaminants coming out of their underground drainage systems. And the other thing they found, which was really exciting to us, is that really small wetland, and the bit that's doing the work in this one is just that bit there, is really small wetlands had a significant impact on water quality in periods of medium to low flow, So what we've decided to do is try and replicate that in Northland. We're going to have 2 building them we built one this autumn, and hopefully the next one in a week or 2. One's a large one, one's a small one. And the 2 questions we want to answer is especially how much contaminants are coming out of our drains in Northland, and particularly Bream Bay, and how much does a small wetland affect that, because we think this is the sweet spot. These things are tiny, like we all know we can do magnificent things with wetlands. The problem is that they're so big. To do something significant, you're talking 2 and 3 and 4% of the catchment, and the reality is no one can afford that. But you know, at 1% of the catchment, that's doable. And if it has an impact on the low to medium flows, which is in Northland where people are worried about water quality, not in the middle of a flood, then that's a real win. So I'll flick over to.
Okay, I'll quickly summarise.
Yeah. No.
So Graham and I have been doing a bit of mahi together. So through Wai Connection, I'm a catchment coordinator as well in Northland. And so we have been doing some īnanga spawning surveys on 2 of the rivers in Waipū, the Wai Hoi Hoi and the Wai Onehu. So this has really helped to support a lot of the mahi that's already happening in the Bream Bay and as part of our Northland īnanga spawning habitat restoration project, which Nick will talk about tomorrow. So we've been doing saltwater wedge surveys to find where that spawning zone would be. And just 2 weeks ago, we installed some artificial spawning habitats by installing hay bales with waratahs on the sides so that the īnanga can spawn there as there's not really much suitable habitat in the bank vegetation. So we're going to keep checking those and hopefully have some successful spawning on the hay bales. We know the īnanga are there, we've seen them in the river, so yeah, hopeful for that. And we've identified 2 sites on the Wai Hoi Hoi that are really nice benches for spawning that would be good for planting. We also, Graham and I had the idea of running a community engagement event to engage the wider community. So we ran a spotlighting event at Waipū Cabs Farm Park in February alongside Patuharakeke, the regional council, and Bonterra, and it was a really cool event. So we just have a little quick video that we'll show.
I reckon we can show that.
We'll show it later,
Yeah.
since we're over.